I'm not sure how much this comes through, but they really made the rogue trader Harlequins caked. Like, these guys are all ass. Like, everything in 40K back when it first came out in the 90s and 80s was squat. Like, no chest, all legs, all arms, because they were doing the scale of we can't print things well, so let's make it look like it. But goddamn, did they give these guys huge asses. I think the reason they were given all of the, well, everything else to distract them is when you realize that they are literally all ass. Like, every guy, every girl in the entire faction was ass with a gun. At least in the art. In the tabletop, they're all just dead immediately, so you can never tell. We're going to be checking out every single Warhammer 40K faction re-explained part 1 from Bricky. We are on the Space Harlequins. I was going to say Craftworlds. Actually, we did the Harlequins. Are we on the Craftworlds? I think we're on the Craftworlds. Does it matter? No. Am I going to enjoy it regardless? Yes. And is this maybe going to touch on your brain? I have absolutely no idea, because she's not exactly deep lore anymore, and neither is Unaid. But also at the same time, they've kind of been put on a bus by Games Workshop, so they might count as too obscure to bring up for Bricky. I honestly don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how he handles that. Let's jump into it. The Craftworld Aeldari.
In the modern world of Warhammer, the Craftworld Aeldari are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves.
No. I think he has a point. It is those elves. Well, I mean, a little less. Actually, now I think about it, Drow are literally just a fantasy version of Drukari. Huh. Yeah, that's probably intentional.
We'll get to them. A Craftworld is a monument.
Wait, he actually... Sorry, this is me geeking out right now. I love it when you see ships with breakdowns of what everything is. That's so cool, man. Ooh, also, Croc. So if I understand, let's just pull this up so we can see it. So if I understand correctly, our goal today is Kirby lore, which, by the way, can be as dark as 40K stuff with whole sound bonding, and what? I'm not going to ask. I'm not asking.
Monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as
like
a form of
Asia
flotilla. During
or
the highest
Australia?
reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the...
Will he mention the more feral elves who have gone planet side and worried dinosaurs? Because that was a thing they used to actually acknowledge existed. I don't think they ever had models for. Because, yeah, that was a thing. Dinosaur riding elves. I don't think he'll bring it up because that's very deep lore and has been for multiple decades at this point. But if he would, that'd be so awesome. Probably won't because this is an intro, but it would be so cool if he did.
Far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaanesha's awakening. The main thing the Craftworld Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow path.
Wait, really? Feudal Japanese? Top knots for the extended hair, but also the braids coming out the back. Yeah, the tall helmets for intimidation, the war mask essentially being more dexterity than strength build. Yeah, I can kind of see it, but I'll be honest, if he hadn't said anything, I never would have made that connection. It's only because he said it now my mind is making those connections, but I can't tell if that's actually a connection or if I'm stretching because he said it. It would be kind of fascinating if that actually was the initial inspiration. Kind of like the initial inspiration for the Harlequins was substances I will not mention on YouTube.
As they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. Ship. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone.
Honestly, I thought it was more about Buddhism than Bushido. I guess Buddhism may be more emptiness, which might be more effective with what they're fighting, but still, whatever.
Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the...
You know, now that he's mentioned it, it does look like the shoulder pads from some of the samurai-style armor I've seen. I didn't notice it just because shoulder pads are all over the place in 40K, but yeah, no, I see it now. Yeah, I see it. And Moon God, just smile. I don't know what you're talking about, and now I'm terrified because everyone talking about Kirby.
The past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the
moment you realize a soul stone is literally just an uploading of yourself to a USB stone. It's a crystal USB for a soul. I mean, they even plug them into robots to keep moving, so yeah.
Eldar say they commune with their ancestors. They mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often, larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones,
and
such
every
as the
Craftworld is a
Infinity
buffet
Circuit in the Craftworld itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood.
Damnation is a path? I'm not the most up on 40K lore when it comes to the Eldar, just because they don't push much of it because it never sells. So I didn't realize the path of wandering makes sense, but a path of damnation? That's probably more derogatory than anything.
Adulthood. And so the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people.
They mean Drukari, don't they?
Generation.
Damnation, Drukari, yeah, same thing.
These paths, when completed, allow.
God damn, that is amazing. Probably literally singing in warp matter on top of them, or ice because the cold temperatures from when you channel. Either way, that is so cool. I wish that was an actual model. That is so. Oh God, Bricky, where the hell did you find this?
An Eldar
that is awesome art.
To the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point: Cain, Vol, Isha, Azaryan, and so on.
I'm not going to ask anything about what that jar was for, Bricky. I'm not saying that Isha is literally just maybe in a cage. A cage that is clear by a giant green slob who throws their goop at her. See, it might sound like I'm making a joke about putting Isha in a jar, but no, this is literally the 40K lore of what Nurgle does to her. Yeah. It predates the horrible internet meme. This doesn't make it better, because it's completely accurate.
These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some,
I wonder if he's going to talk about how technically you can pull souls out of gods. They do it in AOS, and AOS is tangentially related to 40K, so it's not entirely impossible. You might eventually just pull the souls of the gods, or the souls connected to the gods, out of Slaanesh. You'd probably need an actual god, like a god of the dead, to do that, though, and where do they find that? In a way that 40K is profitable for making a plot point and actually going to push. And Moongod, question, do you want to do a demo tour destroy English? I have no idea what that is, and I'm terrified.
The strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar Craftworlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path.
Specifically, dying immediately. I mean, for most of them, that's not even a joke.
Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. I love
the way he phrased that. because it sounds like, oh, you're taking on a title, which you are. But the deeper lore is everything he just said is perfectly accurate. So I don't even know if that's intentional or not, but if he scripted that out, he had to get a little chuckle out of himself. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to embody the soul of the named warrior. Yeah. Because you're literally giving a body to the soul of that named warrior. You are now their flesh puppet. Well, I mean, you're more or less merging souls together because sure, why not? So yeah, but also... That's such a good line, because on the one hand, it's like, oh yeah, cool, take care of a name. On the other hand, cool, he's literally telling you, without spoiling it somehow, exactly the best way to put it of, it is literally moving souls together. And you are that warrior, just in a new body. Neat.
Banshees led by Jane Czar, Fugin and his fire dragons, Baharoth and his swooping hawks, or Malgan Ra and his dark reapers.
I heard he's actually coming back.
Aspect Shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Aeldari show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves. And their most prominent remnants are...
And maybe the Necrons, depending on how you read into the end of it. Again, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party,
we're going Drukari.
It's just beginning.
Yeah, he's doing Drukari. If you have a weak stomach, it's too late. The Drukari. You know, there's a lot of things I was expecting. That freaking... I don't even know the name of that song, but I hear it everywhere with like the stupid dance rave effect. Moonga, you meant a salmon destroys English? A salmon demon destroys English. My chat is scaring me today.
Deep within the webway is the city of Commorragh. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more...
Oh, is he getting the art from scans of books? I haven't bought any editions in a while, so I didn't realize the art in them was still that awesome. I thought they started... No, it's D&D that started using AI slop. Yeah, that's it.
More of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern.
Oh god, they literally did the same thing as Scientology, where they basically had a ship out in international waters. I was going to make a joke about how the Drukari are essentially 40K Scientologist, but the more you learn about either one of those factions, the more you realize it's not really a joke, and I'm going to stop right here.
This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the...
Is it though? Not saying he's wrong. I've heard this lore bit a lot, but I've also heard conflicting lore where it was not actually the city you went to. It's just the one that survived in the webway, but it was more like the one you went to get to the really hard shit that was not in the webway. Again, it's conflicting lores. I think his is probably the right one, but also I don't know, and it might be the case where an art, someone just made it up and other people followed it. I don't know which one was actually intentional, because it might not even matter at this point, because that is actually a thing with 40K lore. Yeah, Michael Anderson. Whenever I hear a Colin Danson song, I always hear the otaku lyrics version. Oh god, there's an otaku lyrics version. Send me a link in Discord. I'm not going to stream that or anything, but I kind of want to hear it, just because it sounds so dumb.
The webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Commorragh kept partying.
This is one of the best parts about it. I'm not sure if he'll touch on it, but it's a blind spot to 3 out of the 4. Slaanesh knows about it because she's constantly draining all of them. They do paint initially to survive that drain, initially. Later on, they realized they kind of liked it. So they kept doing it, and she's constantly eating them all. It's an all-you-can-eat, constant, endless buffet of people who haven't been consumed by her, who are probably feeding her more than her own worshippers. Yeah.
Slaanesh was birthed, they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly tucked away inside the webway. But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest
Ooh, I love the splatters, nice.
Pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukari were born.
He mentioned the immortality. I wonder if he's going to bring up the actual, literally bringing back the dead alive in new bodies that are cloned aspect. Some of the more powerful ones do that. Yeah, it's a long time where dying on the tabletop is as literally as much a reality to them as dying on lore. They walk it off.
Like the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology.
Yeah. Or Tolkien mythology, where it was essentially orcs. Yeah, that's technically accurate.
The Drukari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukari act as pirates and raiders and slavers.
I have no idea what sound effect he's doing in the background, but those random screams are actually freaking me out a bit. I'm not even sure those screams. It could just be like some random metal on metal scraping that's just kind of distorted and high-pitched enough that it sounds like a scream, and I don't know. Ugh, Drukari freaked me out a bit. I'm sure no one can tell that.
They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Commorragh to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of. The Drukari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this.
Organized. That is a very generous phrase. It's more like herding cats. No, actually, they're probably exactly like cats, yeah.
In a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Commorragh in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukari alive and discover ever-increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever-increasingly large supply of slaves.
The homunculi, the answer to what happens if Trench Crusade wasn't dark enough, the faction. It's accurate.
They are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle, livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak.
Also, I realized the image he has in the background is a blurred version of the only Eldar box set where it was Eldar on Eldar violence. And if you happened to buy it, you had an amazing Ynnari army back in 8th edition. Never bought it. And now so few people bought it, it became incredibly rare. I think it actually went up in price, mitigated by the fact that not many people still buy it. So, reasonable. It's a lot of models, which would matter more if I didn't have a 3D printer.
The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most
probably feces.
Of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives. The truth of the matter is that Drukari...
Yeah, I thought ring would be metaphorical. Then I realized, no. They probably make living bells out of people. I'm okay with not remembering that, and yet somehow it's in my mind. Also, Michael Hammond, you mentioned in original music, also Kirby once ate Dracula, and holy water resulted in him consuming the earth. I'm just going to leave that to the side.
Sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally but physically. Commorragh is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times.
Oh god, it's New Jersey. No, it's not even that, it's Newark. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slaanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead
god, that is hard to look at.
Pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's completely accurate. The only other worse one would probably be being captured or killed in a world taken by the World Bears. Not sure this is still canon lore, but it was once mentioned that any time you die on a world claimed by the World Bears, Chaos just gets your soul. So the thing, the Drukari fear, happens to you. But short of that, yeah. Also, that's kind of obscure. I'm not entirely sure if other authors are going to continue that bit of lore, so it could just be written out through sheer forgetfulness of that fact. I don't know.
In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time.
Yeah.
To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the Fleshsmith's control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture.
For anyone wondering, this bit of art behind him, keep in mind the things he's already put up, the things he felt comfortable already putting up. There is, in the actual books for 40K, art of this. He could find it. I could find it. I'm not even talking going to fan sites. There's official art for what he's describing. I'm taking this moment to officially thank you so much, Bricky, for not including an image right here, because I like the idea of sleeping this week. And if you had included an accurate image, that would not be the case. Thank you. Michael Hampton, pinged you with it in Discord. He fought Simon Belmont. Oh, God, you actually... Michael Hamilton mentioned that there was apparently a time where Kirby destroyed the world by eating Dracula and holy water. And I've been dinged with the source material, so it's not even a joke. I'm going to ignore this.
For an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they
I actually wasn't aware of that. That actually makes it worse. So they have the ability not to be monsters, but the ones who aren't monsters get eaten. That is actually worse.
They succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy. A dark reflection to the Craftworlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins. Exodites believe in a
He actually mentioned the Exodites? I was talking about this earlier. Literal elves riding like freaking dinosaurs, man. Oh, feather dinosaurs too. He actually did that. Sorry, they're not written out of canon. They're still canon, but 40K ignores probably one of the coolest factions because they're more or less they're on this world and they don't leave for any reason, except for when they do. But then they're just treated as other stuff in Craftworld at that point, so it doesn't really count. But just, that's such a cool aesthetic. Freaking elves on freaking dinosaurs in space, man. Just disappoints me they don't have that, but I'm so happy he actually included that. That's awesome. Ooh, and Croc Maniac, you mentioned talking about the written off lore. Don't look up lore before 3rd edition. Or an example, Dorn was drinking pigs mist with thumbs as initiation. That's the problem though. Before 3rd edition, things like Aeneid happen. So yeah, also Calgar was in there as well. Like, a lot of it is treated as if they're just not going to touch on it. But with the exception of characters like Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau, who is a canonical Warhammer character, also known as the Disney owns your ass if they ever find out character, they could be brought back if they ever decide to. Minus the things also like Malal, who will not be brought back because the guy who wrote it has the copyright ownership of it shared with other companies. So it's not going to be brought back for the very real, you will lose this lawsuit reason. They did a lot of that. It's why it's the Adeptus Astartes, not Space Marines now, because they lost the lawsuit about that.
Industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Yeah. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers. The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarok. Carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarok.
That's how you say that? Oh shit, I've been saying that. I always thought it was Shagorak or Shagorath. Not to be confused with Sheogorath, who is in Elder Scrolls, but may or may not have been something 40K stole from, because they do that. Shagorak, that is not how I pronounce it. That okay. Maybe I was just very wrong for a while.
They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurred.
But they're not the Inquisition. I'm standing by that joke. Also, and this is just a personal aside, if you disregard the canon clothing style where it's supposed to be model, you just paint them up as if they're in the West, and suddenly their entire aesthetic becomes really cool. Unironically, I would love to get a box set of these guys, because just paint them up in model browns and dusters, and they basically look like you're playing Firefly in space with elves, and it's kind of awesome.
Of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps
it's
one
funny.
that we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Aeldari Codex. So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or maybe it was one of Kegarok's master plans to give.
That explains why I couldn't find them in the new edition. I was actually looking for them. It's probably because not many people played it, because they were only played when they were broken and no other time. Yeah, that would do it.
Get back at She Who Thirsts and save their species. Who could know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Kegarok, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy. Speaking of.
The Imperium of Man, a giant joke. Props, Bricky. That is probably the best transition for this possible. That is just good.
Before the fall of the Eldar, Earth, or Terra, as it's called, was in ruin. One man who looks to put the pieces back together.
Honestly, the one part should also be in quotes, because he wasn't the only one doing it. He was like one of 3 people.
Where did he come from? We don't know. Some say he was the result of early shamans. Some say he is the
that was the TTS option.
Final old one who escaped their species genocide.
That is actually one I have not heard before. I've heard that he's potentially someone who is one of the pieces of the Necron side, but I haven't heard an old one. That is actually a new theory. Ooh, neat.
And those that are smartest know the answer is, it doesn't matter.
I'm going to heavily disagree on this one. It very much does matter, but also Games Workshop is going to be incredibly tight-lipped until they get through all of the Primarchs being re-released in 40K, so they can milk that for as much money it's worth. And then they'll start talking about getting into the lore of the Dark Age, and then they'll finally start talking about the lore of the Emperor, because they can make money on Emperor models, and God knows I will probably throw way too much money at them for that. And at the rate their prices will increase, it'll be a single figure about this tall without anything on it, and it'll be $1,000 for a single model. There's probably someone out there who thinks I'm telling a joke about how their pricing is increasing. I envy that person. Also, it might sound like I'm saying it only matters because it'll eventually be used as fuel to make people buy a model because they upped the lore. I mean, I also just think it's kind of fun. But I think it mostly matters in real life outside of the lore because it will be used as a reason to make money. Not a bad reason, just it'll probably come up in the same way all the Primarchs will eventually return. And yes, I am including the 3 final ones to return, who will probably be, in this order, Ferrus Manus, a certain angel, Sanguinius, and yes, Horus. In that order. I am assuming Horus comes last.
He revealed himself as the Emperor of Mankind, and he was tasked with the most monumental upheaval of humanity possible. The Aeldari's warp fluctuations had turned the golden age of humanity into old night. Interstellar travel cut off? Check. An AI uprising? Check. Brand new psychers popping up and not...
I'm assuming it says Florida man tried to rob a bank paying $500 to a wizard to make him invisible. What? How did you find this, Bricky? Never mind, it's probably just Googling Florida. It's the first thing that came up that day. Oh my god. Oh. Oh, wow. Yeah, no. Croc, you mentioned, where did he come from? Where did he go? Where did he come from? The Golden Clad Emperor. Only 6 more donations for Kirby. Oh my god, they're actually going to force me into Kirby today, aren't they? Hobbit first? No, Ferrus Manus, really. I mean, he's kind of confirmed to already be fighting as a ghost in the Webway, because that did happen in one of the books. That's probably a spoiler. Oops.
Knowing how to handle their powers? Oh, check. Demonic incursions? Check.
Did it? Yeah, I guess it kind of did, but that was... Yeah, that was old night. That did happen, yeah.
Thousands of years this occurred, and now the Emperor of Mankind showed himself to put the pieces back together. Unifying Terra under his rule, the Emperor founded the Imperium of Man and ruled it with an iron fist. He was the supreme leader and nothing could stand against him. He wished to remove mankind from the yoke of its former failures, and he knew he would be the best leader they could have because he was right.
And because all the other leaders they had were legitimately horrible. I mean, like, for all the issues he had, there were other leaders. They were all horrible, like legitimately, monstrously chaos influenced mostly. But some of them were probably more machine influenced to the point of you're kind of not sure which one's worse. Yeah.
AI banned. Religion banned.
Nice,
you
Nicholas.
did as the Emperor told you, or his Thunder Warriors would put you in your place. That place often being a grave.
Yeah.
Now, Terra was thriving, but humanity needed to reclaim its long-lost brethren scattered across the stars. But to do so, he needed those that could build him a fleet truly meant for the...
Okay, just before he says it, I'm wondering, is he going to talk about the Mechanicus, the Primarchs, or the Space Marines? He's talking about building a fleet, so probably the Mechanicus, but this is usually where people transfer into talk about the Primarchs, because then the Space Marines come up. I don't quite know. Also, Nicholas Shen, did you play ZZ and you got both Vivian and Jane Doe? Nice. Congrats, man.
Reconquering of the galaxy. And so he turned his attention to the red planet
of
Mars.
Adeptus Mechanicus. Oh, man. Nah, this is where I need to cut this one. Mostly because I know what we're going to get to with them, and that is always stomach issues. Such as, I like the Mechanicus as a faction, but I do not look at their art. And Bricky has been finding some really good art. Except we also saw some really good art of the Drukari, and I know my stomach is not going to let me continue doing that while also still containing its contents. Yeah. When done right, the Mechanicus are unintentionally Drukari without enjoying it. Except they enjoy it, but that not the cutting parts, more the ending result is pure of machine and the weakness of the flesh. It is really cool as a faction, but also really fucked up the more you think about it. I try not to. I'm a very weak person. All I will say, though, is this is really cool. And he's bringing in a lot more concepts that I thought would not be contacted or not revoked, just even mentioned. He freaking brought up the Exodites, man. I actually found art for them, too, which I didn't know they had. It was probably someone's made-up art, but still, that's awesome. It's one of the factions I wish they would do, but I know they won't in 40K. I might actually play a faction that I would have to buy a new one of, and that would hurt. But it would be so cool. Basically, I'm geeking out over 40K stuff and ignoring that they raise prices again. You guys know the deal, though. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. We check out the Toaster Enjoyers. How much of a joke that is depends on the artist. I know what I said.